December 28th, 2005, the dedication for Jack Morton Memorial Service. Judge Sommerville, Mark Hudnall, Bud Bischoff on the front row here.
Motions to make, pleadings to enter, or action to prosecute, come forward, you shall be heard. God save State of West Virginia and this honorable court. You may be seated.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Judge. I want to welcome everybody here this morning, especially to the Morton family, as we gather here this morning to honor and celebrate and remember the life of our colleague and true friend, Jack Morton. Judge Sommerville is going to open with a few remarks. Judge Sommerville.
Someone long ago, I don't know whether it was a poet or a scribe or a woodsman, made the observation that the mighty oak is best measured once it has been fallen. I do not apologize for the metaphor, because when it came to the allegiance to his country, the faithfulness to his church, the love of his family, and his devotion to the practice of the law, no oak from which Abraham grew was more steadfast or stronger or unyielding to the winds of fortune than was Jack Morton. So we are here to pay measure to the man. I shall speak of him today. My thoughts will be of him as a lawyer and as a person as I knew him. In his prime, Jack Morton had few equals and no superiors of anybody in the bullpen in this arena. Many times when young lawyers would appear in court, and I felt a little sorry for him going up against someone like that, I'd say, watch him. Watch how he conducts himself. Listen to what he says, how he asks questions. Pay attention to how he conducts cross-examination and during final argument. Look how he moves, how he addresses the jury. And one young lady who became a very prominent defense attorney in Southern West Virginia told me that that was the best practical advice she ever had. The purpose, of course, is to talk about Jack and to tell stories. I recall one time he was a defense attorney in a county away from here. And the other lawyer was an excellent lawyer. And he presented a good case. And Jack presented a good defense. It was apparent the final argument was going to be crucial. So the other lawyer had the right to open and close the argument. Jack spoke in between. The other lawyer opened the argument, laid out his points. And then Jack got up, and very skillfully, and I don't mean to twist it, he took the facts the other lawyer presented and explained to the jury how these facts were really points why his side should win. The other lawyer got up, made final argument. He looked at me, he looked at Jack, he looked at the jury, and he said, well, he did it to me again. The jury got the case in about 30 minutes. They came out and they said, yep, sure did. I got a telephone call late one evening. It wasn't late, it was 10 o'clock. It was a friend of mine from another county. And he had a friend that got into some little difficulty. And he wanted to know if he should call Jack Morton or he could call Jack Morton. And at that time, Jack was either a prosecutor or assistant, I don't know which, and I said that the conflict and he couldn't do it because of the criminal matter. And we talked a little bit, and I said, why did you call me about Jack? And he said, I saw him one time in the case. I can't recall whether he was a juror or whether he was a spectator, but he said, he was awesome. Awesome. Well, I thought about that after kind of, that Jack was awesome. And he had a great sense of humor. He could laugh at himself and he could laugh at other things. I'll just tell one story, else we'd be here till the ball game kicks off at 5:30. But when Charles Duffield, Honorable Charles Duffield, one of the finest people out there, was just barely into his job as judge, it was in the 50s, Jack was serving a term as prosecuting attorney of this county. And there was a very tense situation in the county. It was a mine strike. And Judge Duffield told Jack to keep him informed of what went on. So he told me about the letter he got from Jack because something went on. They had a train got killed. And Judge Duffield told me that the letter Jack wrote, he went like this. Honorable Charles A. Duffield Jr., Judge of the 14th Judicial District, Braxton County Courthouse, Sutton, West Virginia. Dear Judge Duffield, Your Honor, sir, yesterday the shit hit the fan. As a person, no one could have been nicer to me than Bill Powell and Jack Morton when I first came back here to practice law. They were kind, and this being an adversarial process, you know, like a dog eat dog, it wasn't that way. They helped me any way they could except here and in the hearing. And I have scars to prove that that's true. But I'll never forget it. And Barbara and I have often talked about the evenings we had at Jack Morton's. John Dyer, George Jackson, Brooks County, Dan, Bill Talbot and I, Dan and Bill and I listened to the tales, the decades of experience and funny things that have happened. And then we would retire to some of the best food you've ever tasted in your life at Ellen's dining table. And the wonderful stories that we heard there. And I suspect there are many lawyers' wives who, on their own initiative or at the urging of their husband, learn to make beef stroganoff. Ellen Morton. It was wonderful. I know Barbara did, and she still does it. I attended the service for Jack at the St. Anne's Church with all the ritual and things that I don't understand about the Catholic Church. But the most poignant part of the service, I thought, was when Father Cooney read the letter that Jack had written him. And I listened to what Jack had to say, and the thoughts that he expressed in that letter reminded me so much of the words of the poet, Robert Louis Stevenson, when he penned his epitaph in Requiem. Under the wide and starry sky, dig me the grave and let me lie. Glad that I live and gladly die. And I laid me down with the will. This be the verse that you grave for me. Here he lies where he longed to be. Home is the sailor home from the sea, and the hunter home from the hill. Thank you.
I will give the lawyers, if one feels an opportunity to say something. I'm going to start with Mr. Talbot. Dan.
Talk about getting caught on the spot.
I always like to.
I know. You always have. Well, I mean, it's really a pleasure to be over here, and I mean, you've got the greater part of the Nicholas County Bar here too, and I'm proud to have with us. It was a long journey we had, Bill Talbot and with Jack, and he taught us all a lot. As a matter of fact, I've always said that Jack Morton was the one who, he and my dad and Charlie Duffield, the former judge, taught me how to try a lawsuit. But none of them ever taught me how to beat. And he always did lay it on pretty heavy, and I thought that was great. One of the best things that I remember, we were having a trial over here, and I had Charlie Duffield was the judge, and Jack was just sitting there, and he had nothing to do with the case at all. And he said, I told the judge, I arranged a plea. And I entered a plea, and the judge said, well, is there anything further you want to say, Mr. Callahan? And I said, yeah, Your Honor, I would like to make a motion that he be placed on probation. And I went through a big, long list of stuff, and it kind of impressed me, my speech did. Jack was sitting over there listening, and he said, Your Honor, and he said, yes, Mr. Morton, I didn't know you had anything in this. He says, I don't, Your Honor, but I would certainly like to second Mr. Callahan's motion. and the judge just pushed his chair back, put his head down, crying, laughing, and then, of course, I had to sit down, I was broke up. He kicked us all to death. And that's the way he was, and he was a heck of a guy, heck of a friend, and I enjoyed practicing law with him. He was tough, but he was fair, and we always got along well together. I remember one case we tried, he said, he came over at lunch, and the jury was just breaking up and going out of the courtroom. And he said, let's go up to the house and have lunch. And I said, well, Jack, we're on opposite sides of the case. Don't you think that that might bother your clients in front of the jury and mine? And he said, he looked at me and he says, and I said, so what do you tell her? After talking, I said, well, Joe, that helps. He said, I have to live and practice with these people all my life and the rest of theirs. And he said, I don't have to, as soon as your case is over, I'll never see you. So I remember that several times. I said that to my client. So it was a great era, it was a great fun, we had a lot of fun together, and he was one heck of a lawyer. I saw him before a jury here one time I came in and watched. He was doing his final argument in a bastardy case, and he got up on Johnny's table there. John was the court reporter. He didn't record the final arguments, and Jack crawled right up on that table there with his legs crossed, talking to a jury which was right in front of him. And I thought, oh my gosh, he'll win this case. And the judge was coming out and said, Danny, how are you? And I said, fine. He said, that's after the jury's gone out. And I said, well, what do you think? Jack convinced him to set his client free, didn't he? The judge said, no, Danny. He said, you get used to this after a while. I said, he made a wonderful speech, but they'll run right out there and find a daddy for that little kid. And that's exactly what they did. So it was a fun time. We had a great time together, and I enjoyed meeting seeing the Mortons all here today. The whole jury box is full of Mortons one way or another. And it's good to see them here and hear the memorial to their dad. He's great.
Thank you, Phil. And I was dressed a little better this morning, but I didn't know about this until I saw Harley get the coffee. But I wanted to say that I always looked up to Jack as a mentor. What Judge Sommerville said was correct. He had no equal in the courtroom, but despite that, Jack taught you how to act, that you could be an advocate, but you could be polite to being an advocate, and you could be trustworthy, and you didn't need to take unfair advantage of anyone. And to this day, when I get my jams, sometimes I sit there and I say to myself, now, what would Jack want to do? You never go wrong if you think that. But I was reading not long ago that in some survey, people picked the book To Kill a Mockingbird as the most American of all books. And the chief character in that book's a small town lawyer in Alabama, Atticus Finch. And I always thought, well, that's Jack Morton. But we'll miss him. I hope somewhere there are 3 or 4 lawyers that have been produced that have been through the fire like Jack was with his war experience, can be calm in the eye of the storm and provide the same service that Jack did to the people of Webster County.
Who wants to be next?
Well, we couldn't figure whether you were looking at me or Danny. And I apologize because my car's loaded and I'm ready to head to New Jersey with Christmas gifts. Dwayne called me this morning, and whoever did the resolution thing, I know this obligation kind of fell to me by default. I remember it seemed like yesterday I was at the bottom of that list of lawyers, and time flies. There are 1,000,001 Jack stories, and there's only one that I remember that particularly striking because it involved Dan and Brooks and Ellen and at one point in time it was a tradition to go to Brooks's camp the beginning of spring for the first gin and tonic. The first of many gin and tonics. The first of many gin and tonics. And we were sitting there discussing me being fresh out of law school and of course Jack and Brooks being ancient then and getting younger. We were discussing the philosophies and so forth of practice of law, and Jack being especially poignant and being the Catholic that he was, recalled that somewhere in one of those books and one of those testaments, there's a discussion about lawyers being the second oldest profession. Of course, prostitutes being first. And he thought that was kind of appropriate. And for a change, me being faster on the draw than Bill, I said it was a good thing that most of us were men, or we'd all ended up being not getting past the first profession. And Ellen, being especially poignant and insightful, said, well, at least we know which one you would have been. Well, in any event, the other day I was at my granddaughter's Christmas church play, and they were doing Handel's Messiah, these kids with their puppets, and somewhere in there, along with all the other things of saying what Jesus was, they said he's a counselor. And that immediately, I thought of Jack, because he always wanted to be called counselor. And being a defense lawyer, it's kind of tough. I mean, we all know that 90% of the people we represent are not necessarily innocent. not necessarily innocent. But of course, Jack, being the counselor that he was, always taught me and Bill that guilt wasn't necessarily relevant. The most important thing is that even though most of the people we represent are not necessarily innocent, probably 95% of them are good people who just made a bad mistake. And it's our job to try and convince the judges who are not necessarily counselors of the appropriateness of a particular sentence. In one case, we are still working diligently, but we're getting there. In any event, words cannot explain what Jack has meant to me, and of course to those of us. Jack was kind of like the Callahan of Webster County. He populated the bar basically by bringing in people that didn't stay with him. But like the Callahans, Jack taught us the higher purpose of what we do. And we'll miss that. We're grateful for it, and it's been a pure pleasure to have Jack. And of course, looking around, there aren't many who recall not only Jack, but Brooks and the rest that have gone before him. And it was a pleasure, and we're going to miss him. I hope that we live up to that. Thank you.
I tell my police officers who just get out of academy, you're going to learn the difference now between or how the law is written and the way it is actually practiced. And that is so true. You think you have the bull by the horns, and then you get out into the real world and realize you really don't know a whole lot. And he was always humble. He was a good friend, and I will miss him.
That's a true friend. I can say, unlike, I can't say this for many lawyers, I've known Jack for years and years, but I never heard Jack say an unkind word about another lawyer or another lawyer's client. Sure, he was out in terms of representing his client, to see to it that his client's needs were met and doing the case. But in doing that, he was always a gentleman, a scholar, and was just treating everybody with that much respect and kindness. Jack, unique in what a lot of lawyers, I mean, he practiced law in the JT court, the United States Supreme Court of Appeals. He appeared in every court of competent jurisdiction of every type in this country. And not many lawyers can say that. We received, searching the internet, it appears we have some, in his practice, some 40 different cases in which he appeared in the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals, which is an outstanding number of appellate cases to handle. He worked with numerous lawyers. The Wysons are on the list, Callahans are on the list, Bill Talbot, Jim Barber, Brooks Callahan, Judge Sommerville, all of those that he worked with. And he was truly, I mean, if you did it, if you observed it in the courtroom, you learned so much. I never will forget the first case in which I prosecuted and Jack was defending. When it came to closing arguments, I didn't care whether I won or lost that case. I just wanted Jack to sit down and shut up. Because he could leave his witnesses, those that were adverse to him, down the primrose path. But they were falling off before they knew what happened. He was an excellent cross-examination, and he was just superb in closing arguments. I remember this one case in particular, we talked about it afterwards, in which I had a prosecuting witness who wasn't a stellar person. So Jack, in closing argument, was talking about all the problems my client had. He made a deal with the state, not to be prosecuting, all those things. So, in rebuttal, the only thing I could think of was a quote from the former Jack Morton trial. He was cross-examining state police sergeant is here in the Hammond's case. Who investigated that Boonie? The Italian Judge Kidd? Trudeau, yes. Joe Trudeau was on the witness stand. And Joe had gone to a certain place looking for the defendant. Jack asked him, well, why did you go there? And he said, well, Mr. Morton, when you go look for somebody just committed murder, you go to church on Sunday morning. So I revised that a little bit. This was a drug case, and my guy who bought some drugs off of Jack's client, I said, well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, you don't go to church on Sunday morning looking for people that sell drugs. So Jack said he thought that was a bit unfair that I'd go back on one of his cases. Use something to do with people, but no, he never said anything at all unkind about anybody. He was just a true friend. Talk about how we were having a pre-trial conference. Dan and Jack and I were representing the bank. We got into a little feud over our branch bank over the county was being built. So we went down before Judge Kidd. Of course, we had lawyers from Charleston, some lawyers from Florida, and we were talking about the one of the pre-trial conference. Judge Kidd looked at Mr. Morton. He said, "Mr. Morton, what's this case about?" And Jack said, "Well, Your Honor," he said, "we entered into a contract to build us a branch bank. And they want to collect more than what we want to pay them." So they overran the contract by $400,000. $400,000? Jesus Christ, how did you give all that for Cowan? on the other side weren't too impressed. Jack was a very, very complex person, a very unique person, a person who truly loved practice of law, but he loved his family and his friends, and I'll always remember that. When I think about Jack, and one of his favorite writers was Norman Vincent Peale. And there are a couple of passages that I want to read from Norman Vincent Peale. When you think about it, think how Jack did follow this. It says, never react emotionally to criticism. Analyze yourself to determine whether it is justified. If it is, correct yourself. Otherwise, go on about your business. And another one is practice loving people. It is true that this requires effort and continued practice. For some are not very lovable, or so it seems. With them some, it seems. Every person has lovable qualities when you really learn to know. And then, I think there are a couple others that you would want us to advise. Tomorrow, when you arise, say out loud 3 times, September 21st, 2005, by his friends, the Webster County Bar Association, and Jack's favorite saying, that good liberty, good life, and godliness. And later, we will hang this in the elevator, which he worked so diligently for, to see to it that the courthouse would always be acceptable to his family and to his friends. Here's a good lady down How are you?